Let's take a look at our first use case for the draft command. So I've got a house plan here, and what I'm wanting to do is I want to create a roof structure in a hip style and be able to do some estimation to understand how much roofing material is going to be needed and be able to take a look at a few of the details of the roof that are a little hard to see when we're looking at a 2D plan. So my wife and I have been sitting here pouring through thousands of house plans, and we found the one. We found the one that we think works for our family, and so it's my job to take this over into SolidWorks and make sure that we can make it happen. So what I've done, a few things to set this up, is I create a sketch on the top plane, and I call that plan. And in there I have a sketch picture. Now I only put the sketch picture in this one sketch, and that way I can turn that off and on, hide and show, very easily. So that way, as I build up the 3D, I can minimize or hide that house plan as needed whenever I'm getting into my 3D details. I've also created a pitch sketch. And what this is a small sketch with a triangle that's got values for my rise and run, which is going to give me my pitch angle. I'm going to use an equation that's based off of 90 degrees minus that pitch angle that's going to give me the taper or the angle that I need to specify whenever I'm creating my drafted boss. From there, I sketched out what the slab was going to be. You can see that includes the alfresco and the portico on the front. Like a good designer, I've got all my dimensions set in there. That'll come into play a little bit later whenever I want to make some design changes. So I've extruded that down 4 inches. And then now I've created what will be the outside walls and extruded those as a thin extrusion to give me that outside profile. And that's where I'm going to pick up from here. So now I want to create that roof structure. I'm going to do that by coming over here to my wall, the very top, select to create a new sketch. I'll zoom back out so that way I can see everything. And I think this is one of those good times where we want to hide that house plan. Now I can see the slab below as well as with the shadowing, you can see the exterior walls. While I'm within the sketch, I want to right mouse button on one of the floor faces, and I want to choose to do a select other. From there, the only face that's available is the very bottom face of the slab. That's going to give me the entire outside profile, and while that's highlighted, I can come over and I can use converted entities or the offset entities. I'm going to show you both of those. So convert entities, I'll start off with that one. And that takes the outside profile of the face that was selected, that very bottom face, and it gives me sketch entities based off of that. It builds a relationship from the sketch entities to the bottom face, so that way anytime I make changes to the floor plan, it's also going to update this roof structure sketch. Now what I actually want to do is not be an exact set right on top of the slab. I want to create some eaves. A typical spacing is 2 foot. So what I want to do is I want to use a right mouse button and choose select chain. That'll save me a little bit of time selecting all those sketch entities. And now I'm going to use the offset entities. Really the only difference between convert entities and offset is if I want to have an actual offset. Now again, 2 foot, 24 inches is a very typical eave setup from the outside of the plan to the eaves. What I also want to do is I want to turn that original offset entities into base construction geometry. So this will be the option that I want to have set. When I click on the green check mark, it creates sketch entities 2 foot outside of my originals, and then it turns the original sketch entities into construction geometry. Now I can proceed over into the features toolbar and choose to extrude boss. Now I don't want to taper this just yet. I want to come up about 4 inches, which would be pretty typical for eave boards. Maybe they're a little wider. They can go 6 inches. It's up to your liking. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to clear the merge result option here. This is going to create my roof structure to be separate from my walls or from my floor, my slab. I do that just to make it a little bit easier because I know I'm going to be asked to render this out and put different appearances on the walls and the roof and all of that. So I'm going to make that a little bit easier on myself and not have those merged into one entity. So green check mark will go ahead and get the eave structure, and then I want to go right back on top of that face and choose to create another new sketch. While that face is selected, I'm going to use convert entities, and it's going to again take the outside profile of the face that I've selected and turn those into sketch geometry. This is where we're going to get our first look at the draft command. The easiest way to add draft to a feature is to do it while we're extruding it. So within the extruded boss command, this time I want to give us a value, a distance quite larger, let's say 20 feet. And then right below that, I want to use the draft option. Now earlier, whenever I was talking about theta, I was talking about the angle off of vertical. That's the angle that I'm going to specify here. So if I were to specify something like 15 degrees and go to a front view, you can see that the angle of 15 degrees is off of straight vertical. As we increase that to say 30, we start to get a little bit of our roof structure, but you can see by the preview that it's still flat on top. And we know a 30-degree pitch on a roof off vertical is pretty steep. Let's say we want to rough this in somewhere around 45 degrees. Okay, that looks pretty good to get us started. And notice that my set distance here is a little bit taller than what it actually comes out to be whenever we specify 45 degrees, but that's okay. What will happen is whenever it contacts itself or makes a peak, it will stop the geometry. A green check mark there will allow us to very quickly see a hip style roof with all the valleys and the ridges.